Oh, how the mighty have fallen after an exciting week 5 of fantasy Major League Rugby. The guy that was all talk can't even appear on this show to face the noise. Yours truly taking him down after week five's play. On this week's episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show, we break all that excitement down, plus look ahead to some waiver wire options and a week 6 that is just around the corner. The Fantasy Ruckers Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode 146 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much to our Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of making fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR. With you each and every single week, Matt Yee, Ryan Yee, and our very own Devin Vanderpool, our third host of this show, picks a convenient show to say that his son has to go to swimming lessons today, because like I said at the top,
he's trying to be there.
He's trying to be there. I get that, but like I said at the top, the mighty have fallen. And if you could call Vandy that, you might be able to call him that at the start of this season, because he has been doing pretty well from all aspects of fantasy MLR, pretty solid. One of the, or I should say, used to be one of the leaders in our listener league. He's been doing pretty well in the prediction segment, not too bad in the weekly challenge. But hey, he goes head to head against the Supreme Commissioner Yee, and with one of the highest point totals of the week. Let the talk do the talking, and let the walk do the walking. Ryan Yee, Supreme Commissioner Yee, knows how to get it done. Isn't that right, Matty?
Way to go, Ryan. Yeah, round 5. You're killing it, Ryan. Way to go.
Right, we're just transitioning the all talk, all bark over to me, because I know all of our league members out there heard all that talk that Vandy had a couple episodes ago when he was feeling pretty good about his fantasy MLR team. I think he's still feeling pretty good, but I will say the victory did taste a little bit sweeter this past weekend, knowing that Vandy was the victim to what was a very good fantasy performance by my squad. Either way, though, it was a weekend that was filled with some MLR action, wasn't it, Maddie? And we got a jam-packed episode in this one to get to all of that. Our second By-Mageddon, I should say, in just 5 weeks. Yeah, way too many.
Too many. That's too many.
Had another 3 teams on bye, but we got through it. We made it through.
Yeah, it feels like every couple weeks we're gonna have a By-Mageddon, so that's fun. But yeah, I mean, hey, it makes things interesting. It makes our waiver wire segment a little bit more impactful. Just means you got to make make reasonable choices as a fantasy manager.
And that's what we got coming for you. Of course, in this episode, a bunch of suggestions on what we look at another busy week of rugby. Week 6 is now upon us, but we are going to look, of course, first back at the week 5 that was. All of our top fantasy performers got team of the week honorees to dish out. We'll get to those waiver wire picks. We'll give you our predictions heading into week 6, plus a little bit of sports betting talk with some interesting picks that happened over the course of this past weekend. And then I guess most recently give you some of the latest rundown of what's happening across the league. All the good stuff here that is normal of the Fantasy Ruckers Show that you can expect each and every week.
Yes, you can. And before we get to all like the housekeeping stuff, at the time of recording, happy St. Patty's Day for those who celebrate. I guess I learned today that there's a St. Patrick's Day green and an orange. I didn't know that.
What do you mean? Explain.
I don't know. I just know that there's 2 colors, and apparently they duke it out.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
Yeah. Google it.
Yeah. Well, I know that a bunch of MLR teams, I think whether they lost or won, but more so the winning teams had a pretty good St. Patty's Day weekend, celebrating a little bit. I saw the New England Free Jacks having a pretty good old time on what was a pretty raggedy shuttle bus or something, celebrating with some of their fans. But But yeah, happy St. Paddy's Day to all. But yes, like Maddie said, let's get right into it. Before we do, like we say every single episode, follow us at the Fantasy Ruckers. If you're new here to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, we bring MLR and more importantly fantasy MLR content to you each and every week. We got starts of the week, team of the week, waiver wire pickups, even some funny clips from this show gets posted onto our socials. Hit that like button, subscribe. We've had a growing community over the past couple or handful of years, I should say, and we're continuing to want to make that bigger and bigger and join that movement that is making fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR. We appreciate all the support. Hit that bell to get notified when new episodes do come up. They come up every Tuesday morning now for the foreseeable future. So make sure to get notified firsthand when those episodes do come out. Check out thefantasyruckers.com, the official platform for fantasy MLR here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Got some cool stats over there. It's constantly getting updated thanks to our very own website guru, Alistair Kirsch-Poole. And also give our Discord community a little bit of a visit. Lots of fun people over there that love to chat a little bit about Major League Rugby and rugby as a whole. And yeah, fun community that has grown quite a bit over the course of the past handful of years. But hey, no more time to waste. Let's get right into it and talk about some of the things that we need to catch up on in the world of Major League Rugby.
News dump.
All right, and with that, we get into the show with the TFR News Dump, like we start every single show, including this episode 146. Maddie, we have another trade on our hands. And it includes another team that has
This one's the fakest trade I've seen in a long time.
Okay, let me shout it out to the people and let me tell them what we are dealing with, and then you explain to me what is going on here. So Anthem Rugby Carolina receives on loan Toby Fricker, back three player from the New England Free Jacks in exchange, and also gets one 2026.
Yeah,
again, I repeat, a 2026 international slot for
fake.
a 2025 international slot and salary cap consideration. So in total, Toby Fricker, an international slot for next year in exchange for an international slot this year, and salary cap considerations goes to the Free Jacks.
This is fake. I don't understand. I don't understand how Anthem can just throw these international spots around like it's nothing. Like, it makes no sense to me. Why do they have the 2026 ones already lined up? Like, how far out can I trade my 2028 international slot for a guy? Like, I don't understand. I don't think they should be trading these away. If you want to see a good rant in it, go look at Brian Ray's Twitter account. He'll say something on every one of these. Yeah, I don't really understand it, but whatever, from a fantasy perspective, Rye, this is their second back three acquisition in the past 2 weeks. Got to start asking questions on what is happening with their back three. What's happening with Mitch Wilson? Should we be concerned about Mitch Wilson because we haven't seen him in the past few weeks? And kind of, they're not just getting these guys just for fun. There's got to be intention behind it. While we didn't necessarily see gaps in the back three per se, because Laine Latu's been pretty good back there in coverage. And they got Connor Mooneyham back, and they got, I believe, Gadsden on the other wing. Yeah, I didn't see too many gaps. So to me, I feel like there's some injuries that are lingering there that they obviously haven't told us about. Yeah,
so I guess we'll see. Toby Fricker.
And long-term injuries if they're making trades for.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I think something to note is Toby Fricker is, I believe, a U.S. eligible player.
Yep.
And we know that Carolina loves to rack those guys up. You make a great point, though, there, Maddie. It is interesting about these international slots. We thought that teams were supposed to have 7 to 12 of these international slots. Anthem were given kind of special treatment, and we're told that they could go down. They could go down to 6. By our accounts, they have 4. So that is obviously below the 6 number. I don't know how this is enforced. I'm not quite sure what kind of goes around here. But obviously Anthem do not value these international slots and are more than happy to give them away for acquiring US eligible players. I guess New England taking advantage of that. We'll see how this all shakes out. But yeah, that's a whole nother conversation to have. But either way, Toby Fricker is now part of Anthem Rugby Carolina. The New England Free Jacks acquire another international slot, and we'll see whether that gets put to use here this season. And whether they utilize that international slot, which is always something when it comes to reading between the lines. Only last move that, Maddie, that I got to catch up on that was announced last week is that Houston announces the return of 2021 MLR draftee Tinashe Muchena. The U.S. eligible Zimbabwean back row was drafted 15th overall out of Lindenwood before earning his MLR debut with Chicago, where he played from 2023 to 2024. Now with the Houston Sabercats, they bolster that back row room. I wouldn't expect there to be much fantasy impact when it comes to this. Already a deep fantasy room that has obviously the likes of Ronan Murphy, who has taken a back seat to why is the name escaping me?
Tuifua,
Sam Tuifua, exactly. So we'll see. But Tinashe Muchena now a part of the Houston Sabercats. Matt, before I move on, is there anything that you need to get off your chest here with anything happening around the league?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys are just trying to find the new kind of next thing. Maybe your new running playlist, maybe your new workout playlist. I don't know. You're looking for a new song. You're looking for.
I think I know where you're going with this.
A rare sight, which is a post from the San Diego Legion Twitter page, decided to get us all going on this Monday morning with an Alex Corbisiero freestyle rap. I don't know what it was, but it was absolutely awesome. It was him in the change room. If you didn't know, he's part of that San Diego staff. And him in the change room with the boys rapping over highlights going on. Yeah. Pretty unreal. And if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. And yeah, definitely have that thing added to all your playlists, if that's even possible.
There you go. PSA from Matthew. Alex Corbisiero, newest addition to Maddie's go-to workout playlist.
And now I'm never going to watch Peacock Six Nations the same, because he's going to show up on halftime and all I'm going to see is him in a San Diego Legion polo rapping in front of the boys.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, hey, let's get to some updates that some of our league members need to know here for the upcoming week.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye.
All right, hear ye, hear ye. Here is Supreme Commissioner Yee with a Fantasy Ruckers Leagues update. In this segment, we usually go over our weekly challenge results and any other notes that people need to know when it comes to playing Fantasy MLR. We'll start off with the weekly challenge, Maddie, because we have a familiar name that is back atop of our weekly challenge this past week and is maybe going to be the guy that's going to be hunting you down here towards the tail end of this season.
Between me and him.
But for the second time this season, we mentioned his name earlier. We called him the website guru. And we might need to be adding weekly challenge guru to the list because Alistair Kirschpool, our very own website, Fantasy Ruckers website developer, comes in first here with a whopping 58.4 fantasy points scored, large in part due to Perry Humphreys getting put into that lineup for 26.7.
I think we got to check the logs here. I'm a bit concerned. He has too much power on this website, and I think he may be cooking the books over there.
I mean, you can call it that, or you can call him having a crystal ball. Who knew that Perry Humphreys was going to be our back three player of the week, which obviously we'll get into as we start dishing out some team of the week honorees. But hey, what a call. Call your shot, Alistair. And he calls his shot with some of his Old Glory DC boys, and it pays off for him as he's number one in the weekly challenge. Again, 58.4 fantasy points on the week. He now is sitting in second on the season. Matt, you're still in first, but let me know. Are you sweating at all here? You're at 245.9 on the season. You scored 40.7 this past week. He's now 16 points away from you.
We're chilling. Yeah, this was my down week, and I still finished 5th on the week. So this was my off week. I went into this. I saw the players that I picked. I watched them play, and I said, "Oof, this is going to be a tough one." And my tough one is 5th on the week. 40
I can't stand
points.
it. I can't stand it.
So yeah, I'm not.
You're making me dislike this segment as much as you dislike this segment.
Hey, I'm not too worried. I'm not too worried.
I will say it was funny because when I texted our Fantasy Ruckers group chat, I said, "Ooh, like had a pretty decent weekly challenge week," and then you come back and clap back and say, "Oh yeah, it was an off week for me," and yet you sit at 5th. I'm somehow still in 9th in the week, and I thought I had a decent week. Vandy finishes 10th.
Vandy in 2 places.
I did beat Vandy in 2 places. Got him better on the weekly challenge. He still sits ahead of me, so I'm 13th on the year. Vandy's 8th. Like I said, Matt, you're 2nd.
Fantasy Ruckers still doing better than you.
So I mentioned it last episode. I'm glad that you mentioned it. I said that my strategy now was going to be, I'm going to make the lineups for mine. I'm going to make the lineup for the Fantasy Ruckers. And then I'm going to switch the lineups to make sure, because it has been historically the Fantasy Ruckers lineup just constantly doing well. I did that this week, and I think I'm cursed because clearly I still finished below the...
This is true.
But also a caveat, I don't know who makes the fantasy, right? This is all hypothetical, right? I don't put it together. It's the Fantasy Ruckers. I don't know.
Yeah. I heard it's a guy named Yayan Ree.
Yeah, exactly. But either way, weekly challenge. It's been a doozy for me, been pretty fun for Matthew, and even more fun for Alistair Kirsch-Poole. If you want to get in on the fun, the weekly challenge, that is, to get a first dabble into fantasy MLR, you can do that. The link is in the description, in our bio as well. It's a fun little way to get a weekly fix in of fantasy MLR on the fantasyruckers.com. Last kind of housekeeping notes when it comes to Fantasy Ruckers leagues for the season-long leagues. I will mention we're in week 5, right? We just passed week 5, heading into week 6. Eligibilities. That was good, right? Are starting to change. We had a handful last week: Frank Lahore, Sam Gallas, some to be named. Before that, Santiago Videla. This week, I know names like Devon Rousseau, because of the alleged injury that we don't for sure know yet, which is another whole topic of Dan Creel. Devon Rousseau has been stepping up into that center position. He now loses his back 3 eligibility, so it's interesting to see how that's going to play in the mix. And he'll be among others that will have that. So we will have an announcement in our Discord. We should begin to have those announcements on a website. We've added a little new feature that Alistair has put in making posts on our website. Our website is posts now. We can create content on our website, Matt. That's when you know you made it. So check that out. That's going to be coming down the pipeline here, especially ahead of waiver wires coming up this Thursday, getting them in Wednesday at midnight Pacific time. You'll want to keep that in note too as well. All right, Matt, you ready to talk about the week that was?
Let's do it.
All right.
Quick Tap Recap.
All right, time for our quick tap recap here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show. 3 teams on bye: Houston, Anthem Rugby Carolina, and San Diego. As we mentioned, our second bye-mageddon in just 5 weeks, but we were entertained with some pretty interesting rugby and some pretty interesting results. We'll obviously get into each and every single one of these games, but Maddie, before we do, what was your overall thought on the week? What was maybe your biggest surprise, your biggest not surprise? What was the most fun about these matches? You tell me.
I feel like the best way to get into that was just let's get it. I don't want to spoil anything, right?
Okay.
I don't want to spoil anything about the games, but hey, I don't want to spoil anything.
All right. We'll tee you right up then here. All Saturday matches this past week. I do enjoy it. Do you enjoy the all Saturday matches? Like, you turn it on and it just runs all day long, and it was spaced out perfectly. You could catch all the games for the most part. It was pretty solid.
Yeah. Well, the only thing, and this is just me, but I'm not catching the 10 o'clock game. It's too late. I'll catch it on Sunday. But yes, it is nice. It is nice to just kind of whip through the games. Kind of all in one day, pretty much.
Well, we started off with the Chicago Hounds at home against Old Glory DC Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Almost. But what was a blustery windy Chicago. They call it the Windy City for a reason, right? It was definitely that on Saturday. An interesting game. Dominant first half by Chicago, right? They jump up to, what was it, like a 20-5 lead, something like that. Old Glory DC kind of hanging in there, messy at times, but you mentioned it earlier, Maddie, that back line provides sometimes that spark that Old Glory DC needs at times and kind of help them keep in it. And they ended up winding it down to a 4-point loss. Chicago wins this one 30-26. Overall thoughts on this one with Chicago hanging on to that win by a thread there at the end.
Man, I really felt good about my OGDC pick, and I felt like I had it at the end there, but I didn't. And look, Chicago is becoming, I think this is the Chicago team, right, that you thought was there 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
You're going to always mention that, huh? You're going to.
Yeah, I will. But the Chicago team, they're one of the best phase building offenses that is in the league. Like, you see them, they will rack up 15 to 20 phases or like 10 to 15 phases constantly throughout the game. But to me, like, Old Glory DC really just beat themselves up. Like, Old Glory DC had every chance to go and win this game. When you think about that first 30 minutes, they had 12 penalties to 0 in the first 30 minutes. You're never going to win a game like that. Every time they kind of thought they were going to get something going, they had a mistake. They got a penalty, something like that. But like you said, Ryan, when they got the ball, when they held on to the ball, their backline and their offense looks really good. It just isn't consistent enough. And the one thing I'll say is, like, that last play of the game where they were inside the 22 of Chicago going for the game-winning try, and Jason Robertson just drops the ball on or knocks the ball on just a pass off the 9 with not that much pressure. It looked pretty routine. To me, I kind of saw, I was like, all right, that sums the game up. That sums it. Old Glory DC never deserved to win. They beat themselves up too much. And that sums it up right there perfectly.
Yeah. And now, Chicago heads into a bye feeling pretty good about their season so far. I think a lot of people have Chicago as one of the best, if not the best. I've seen a bunch of power rankings out there, and Chicago's right up there. I think, again, to your point, Maddie, to allude to the thought that I had a couple years back when I thought Chicago was going to be this wagon of a team, they are looking pretty solid this year too. Again, my skepticism with Old Glory DC remains. I think we said it at the beginning of the season, right? And I think that really hasn't changed, at least for me, up to this point. I know they strung a couple wins together, some of them closer than maybe they'd like to see, with that last minute win with Miami, obviously squeaking away with a win last week, and then, just barely losing, I guess, this one, at least on paper. It's interesting. So we'll see how Old Glory DC bounces back from this one, at least from a fantasy perspective. Old Glory DC players doing pretty good for you. We start off with our back three player of the week. We mentioned him earlier, Perry Humphreys, in his third start of the year, and by far his best start of the year, 26.7 fantasy points in a hat trick try performance. You add 80 meters gain to that, plus a forced turnover, and in the full 80 played, plus 4 tackles on top of that. He is our best back three player of the week. We also have our best back row player of the week in this one as well, Corey Daniel of Old Glory DC, 20.9 fantasy points. Season high 27 tackles. And this is the Corey Daniel that, like, you remember, right? Like, I mean, not that he didn't have a lot of tackles in the games before. 13 in round 3, 13 in round 4, but 27 tackles. There's only a handful of people that are machines like that on the field, and Corey Daniel is one of them, and this is an example why. He adds a try to that, 33 meters gained, plus a forced turnover, 20.9 fantasy points, gets him the back row team of the week honor. And then lastly here, All Glory DC, Fly Half. You mentioned about the knock on, but doesn't really get baked into the points outside the turnovers.
50 points for that.
Jason Robertson, 11.4 points. It was a low week for fly half, surprisingly, but either way, 11.4 gets it done for Jason Robertson. From the Chicago side of things, you have McLean Jones at 14.5, who scored 2 of the tries for Chicago, and also Lucas Rumble, 9.4 for him. Chris Hilsenbeck in this fly half, pseudo start position as Tim Swiel is injured. Does well once again, hits double digits for the first time this year, 10.6 with the 2 conversions and 3 penalty kicks. And that's probably making up for a majority of the fantasy points that you expected to come from a 30-point Chicago game. They didn't necessarily do that from the try scoring. You add 3 penalty kicks, 9 of their points in there. Hilsenbeck taking advantage of that. So no Chicago Team of the Week honorees in this one, despite coming away with the win. 3 for Old Lord DC, despite the 4-point loss.
Yeah, McLean Jones is crazy. I don't understand. He has like 10 meters gained, or no, 5 meters gained, 10 tackles, but the guy just finds his way into the try zone every time from like within the 5-meter line. It's nuts. I don't understand how he does it. But hey, that's, if you like that ceiling, you go for it, but that floor is low. Yeah.
4th try in the year for him. He has had a game as low as 2.6 fantasy points in round 2, but as high again as 14.5.
Look at those meters gained. Like he gets tries and doesn't get meters gained over 25 the entire season.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. It just shows where he gets his points.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's shift on over now to the second matchup of Saturday. The New England Free Jacks take on the NOLA Gold at home. And in what was a probably closer than anticipated matchup than what most people thought, especially from the one I am talking to here.
Got to be concerned about New England.
New England wins on a last-minute try. A line-out maul. Jed Melvin at the back of that maul finds a way to get into the try zone on the time-expiring, game-winning try. And what was, I will shout out, Maddie, your start of the week, Jed Melvin, has an awesome day. Would be possibly one of the Team of the Week honorees when it comes to this past week, but obviously with the electric performance by Corey Daniel is just short of that with 16.3 fantasy points. But before we get into those, I want to know this. Your concern level of both these teams. Obviously, New England, we'll talk about that, but obviously you've been on the show as well with the concern level of the NOLA Gold. Let's start off with New England. They screech away with a win. They haven't looked as great as maybe a lot of people thought, being the back-to-back champions. But we also have a caveat there that this team has notably started slow in the past and have then looked good towards the tail end of the season. Where are you, where it stands with that, and kind of your thoughts on their gameplay against NOLA this weekend?
Yeah, it feels very similar. Like it feels like deja vu from last year too, where you look at this team and you think, oh, like this isn't the defensive New England Free Jacks that I remember. This isn't the kind of smooth offensive New England Free Jacks that I remember. Like you watch them and they're sloppy. They make mistakes. They're not. Yeah, they're just, their offense is incredibly sloppy. Something that you don't expect from the guys on this team and from this team at all. Like you look at some of the mistakes that they make, it's like not expecting the ball, not being in the right place, and those are just errors. But it feels like deja vu. Like I that's why when I look at New England Free Jacks, I'm concerned. Yes, I'm less concerned with the New England Free Jacks than I am with NOLA Gold, because NOLA Gold, we have seen them basically be bad and just stay bad.
So does this close outcome where NOLA probably should have came away with the win this one, does that bring your level any more up when it comes to NOLA Gold?
I think, look, like they're much better at the breakdown this week. 100%. They're much better at the breakdown. Like you just look at a guy like Jed Melvin, Ryan, you brought him up, 0 steals, 0 forced turnovers. That's a guy who kind of lives at the breakdown and really didn't get a bad of an eye. But yeah, it could have been multiple factors. But for me, the big concerning thing in this game was NOLA's defense. Like they just did not want to tackle anybody. And like, I felt like I was seeing New England Free Jacks just constantly break tackles all the time.
Mm-hmm. I.e. that LaRue Milan try, which was filthy.
Yeah, that was dumb. But like they just didn't want to tackle. So like if it's not the breakdown, then it's defensive. If it's not just a defensive structure, then it's a tackling. And it's always something with this NOLA team. And I can't have confidence in them. Because this is just a trend that we've gotten way too used to seeing over the past 4 or 5 years.
Fantasy asset wise, though, are you a little bit more confident than last week of having NOLA guys on your roster?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like you look at the back line and the way that they perform for NOLA, like just looking fantasy wise, and you look at some of these players, you really can't have much to be like they score what 30 points, right?
Yep, 30,
30
31.
They score 31 points, and their highest scorer is Luke Carty at the fly half position, who, by the way, didn't even play that great and gets 6.4 fantasy points. Like how can I be confident in that back line? Like the forwards, yes, a lot more confident. I think there are staples. There are guys like Jonah Moe. There are guys like Joe Taufetti where you just can't not have on your team. But like you look at the back line, and I'm still concerned. I'm still looking at them and like,
which is interesting.
Can you generate anything?
Because that was what we thought, definitely
Yes.
what you thought heading into this year was going to be their strength, right? You have a back line of
Duplessis, Tamaki, Xavier Mignot, Ed Fido. I mean, I guess we thought Caleb McNey was in the back, but still Cooper Coates there too. Villamoni Karoy, we've yet to see this year. Like we thought it was going to be something really special. But I've yet to see it. Outside of guys like maybe Xavier Mignot.
Yeah. And even this past week did not
and
have
Cooper Coates and Cooper
right.
Coates.
And this week, I mean, neither of those guys necessarily having that great performance.
I mean,
like you mentioned.
No, this week was the week to talk about. I think more so fantasy wise, and I feel like we talked enough about the game, but like more so fantasy wise, Ryan, the guys I want to talk about are the guys on the New England Free Jacks. Like Vian Conradi scores a try. He looked back. Like he looked solid. He looked like the Vian Conradi we saw the past, I guess, 2 years ago. Leroy Milan looked like vintage. I don't think you can really use the word vintage, but he looked like vintage Leroy Milan. Like 2 years ago, Leroy Milan, like the way that he was breaking tackles, the way that he was running with the ball. He's a guy that you definitely want to look at. And like, I'll even bring up a guy like Isaac Olsen, who's playing on the wing and started on the wing for them, who looked good against New England Free Jacks, and a guy we don't really talk about too often, but like he looked really good for New England Free Jacks too.
Yeah, 14.7 for Leroy Milan, his season high so far by far, with the try and the 81 meters gained. Vian Conradi, 14.5, again, his season high, 39 meters gained, a try there as well. And then Maddie mentioned Isaac Olsen, 12.5, with the 54 meters gained, 7 tackles and 2 forced turnovers. Yeah, those guys looking slow. That's where the disparity between, I guess, fantasy and actual gameplay exists, right? Like I think the fantasy production is always going to be there with New England, right? And I think you're going to be able to find these guys, maybe in part due to the lackluster defense that they were going up against with NOLA. But I think whether you are confident in New England versus whether you're confident in New England assets, fantasy assets, I think are two different conversations. Anyways, on the NOLA side, got Jonah Moe, we mentioned, 18.4 fantasy points. He is a stable. Second time he's surpassed 18 fantasy points this season. He does it from the 7 position this week. He started at 7 the past 2 weeks in a row that he's appeared. This week, 33 meters gained, sets a season high in tackles and 17, adds a try as well. Then you go down the list and you kind of mentioned it, like really there's not really any other names here from a fantasy sense. You mentioned Joe Taufetti, 8.4 points. We'll get into it more in the waiver wire segment. But I mean, Aiden King coming off the bench, and I think a large portion of his points came from the fact that he came off the bench and had 4 forced turnovers. Like I'm not counting on that on each and every basis. So outside of kind of those marquee names, especially from the NOLA side of it, there really wasn't any fantasy production, and you're still left wanting for more. And I think a big question, and we'll get into waiver wire, we're like, what do you do with Xavier Mignot? Like we kind of were on this trend before. We're like, he's going to be a try-a-week scorer, right? Or Ed Fido, right? Like you drafted him so high because you thought he was going to be this try machine. And if a back line is going to be like that for NOLA, where they're just not going to be productive, I'm not too sure whether or not it's going to be worth it to, at least maybe not Ed Fido, but for me, like I dropped Xavier Mignot heading into this week because the confidence in there. Again, we'll get that into the waivers, but I think that just reflects where we stand at. The Sloan, I guess the one good part about NOLA was the set piece. They cashed in this past week.
I mean, this is the second time that I've seen the New England Free Jack set piece get bullied. Like get bullied at times in games, and being bullied by NOLA. Yes, they're good. But yeah, we saw a lot of points come out of that. You can just look at Ali Lepetti's points. You can look at Joe Taufetti's fantasy points. Just kind of a catalyst, or I guess, a product of that set piece and how strong they were this game against New England.
Yeah, maybe a matchup thing to look out for in terms of
the,
going up against.
I forgot, right before we move on to the next game, Luke Hardy won them the game with a kick, with a penalty kick, and then absolutely lost them the game with the dumbest. I'm trying to remember what exactly it was, but it was just like the dumbest kick ever.
And that's Luke Hardy for you sometimes, you know.
We've
seen it before. All right, let's move on to the Saturday evening match at 6 p.m. Eastern time. The Miami Sharks taking on the Utah Warriors. I mean, well, like, what do I say here? I'll just let you get into it, Maddie. Like, Utah looks great when they are looking great, if that means anything. But, like, the times that you thought that maybe Utah were going to let this one go was when they were down 2 guys. You know what I mean? They had 2 yellow cards. That's when Miami really snuck back into it. But Utah, they're a fast-powered offense that can move the ball. I think Joel Hodgson looks fantastic at the 10 position. His passing, like, when I watch that game, it makes such a big difference. His ability to suck in defenders and for him to get it out wide when he needs to get it out. And to add to that, like, D'Angelo Leulila looks great at the 12. Like, I think he's a fantastic 10-12 combo between those two. Miami, tough match. Again, I didn't think they were that competitive throughout the whole match, and the only times that they were was when they had an advantage from a numbers perspective because of the yellow cards. But what was your thought?
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of my points right in the head. I said Leulila is an absolute truck. It's crazy how hard he runs. And their backline is just
a thick boy.
Yeah. And their backline, like you said, right, is just filthy. Like, it's just so filthy. I will say that Joe Mano, probably one of the hardest hitting wingers. He literally did a run it straight challenge with one of the Miami prop. I think it was Beckerman. And he absolutely crushed him and made him drop the ball. So, yeah, Joe Mano was a beast. I think for me, like, the one key thing that I took away from Miami is that defensively at the 13 position, like, you look at Spencer Jones's game, 15.7 fantasy points, 64 meters gained, and 2 assists. Like, felt like he was running through that Miami defense at ease, and they were having trouble just defending that 13 channel. So it was tough, and you saw Spencer Jones kind of reap the rewards from that all game.
I will say, I think a large part of that too, though, is a product of Joel Hodgson. Like, I thought about that too, and I think Miami was playing the shooting style.
It's both of them. It's both of them. Like, we saw this with Paulo Sique a lot last year. Like, you use a guy like D'Angelo Leulila, you use a guy like Paulo Sique, you bring 2 defenders in, and suddenly that 13 channel has gotten a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And I think they might have found kind of a recipe here, and this is what they've always had success with.
Yeah. No, I agree wholeheartedly with that.
So, I mean, hey, fantasy-wise, if they continue to have this type of lineup, you have to look at whoever's in that 13 position for them.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. Before we get into 13, do we call this the I told you so game or the prove you wrong game when it comes to Zion going?
No.
Do we say that he heard you and Vandy talking trash and he comes out, gets listed as the starter? I saw him score 1 try and I'm like, oh boy.
All right,
and then
but
he
Spencer
scores the
Jones did all
try.
the work on both of them.
He was
so
there.
Like,
hey,
whatever.
you and me being nines, we know that's what we do, right? Just stay around the ball, and sometimes you're lucky and the ball flies back to you and you're going to score a try. 46 meters gained, 2 tries, or scrum half of the week.
Logan Crowley would have done the same thing.
A scrum half that scores 18.7 fantasy points. I don't know. I think he was quite motivated by the doubt that you and Vandy had of.
All right, do it again next week, and then we'll see.
Well, no. See, the thing is that, and we'll get into it into my scrum half waiver wire pick, but I don't think Zion Going will be starting next week. Either way, scrum half of the week, 18.7 for Zion Going. You mentioned him, Maddie. Center of the week, Spencer Jones looked fantastic in there. He was great. And then on the Miami side of things, front row of the week, Thomas Beckerman off the bench, scoring a try in there, along with 43 meters gained. Kind of like one of those shock performances that you're not going to really count on each and every week. But from outside of those team of the week players, Jordan Trainer continues to look good. We said if you hadn't had him on your waiver wire before, you had to snatch him up. He's probably fully owned now. 100% owned in all weeks 2 weeks ago. So people did listen to us, Maddie. People listen. He was less than 50% owned before. He has another great week. Santiago Videla, this is one of the questions I want to ask. Is his value the same? He's I was looking at this, at the top players in all of fantasy right now. Videla sits in the top 5. He's doing it not at the fly half position, but he's doing it at the back 3. He's starting more at fullback. We had him projected as a fly half. Obviously, Martin Elias has stepped in since then. Is the value the same with Videla? What are we thinking about Videla? Obviously, someone that must be rostered because he's in top 5 conversation right now, but he's kind of doing it sneakily. You haven't had that breakout performance from Videla yet. He's just been consistent for the past 3 weeks. He's scored above 13 fantasy points.
Yeah, I mean, look, he just gets some meters gained, and I think that's for him at the 15 position of fullback. You're just gonna get a staple 50 plus meters gained from him every game. That's 5 points right there, and you'll get some other work from him as well. Surely he will get some other points elsewhere. Yeah, I think as long as he's playing 15, he's a must start.
All right. Let's move on to the last and final game of the weekend, Maddie. RFC Los Angeles taking on the Seattle Seawolves in what was an interesting match. Obviously, Seattle kind of looked really, really solid at the start, or at least, how should I put this? Took advantage of, I think, a lot of mistakes at the start.
I think I think Seattle dominated, which is kind of weird to say when you kind of explain the score.
Yeah, 35-29 victory for RFC LA. I do also, though, think that LA makes it harder on themselves a lot. I think an interesting stat, was it the most, I think they said it during the broadcast. It was they have the most meters gained, but they haven't won a match yet leading into this match. And it just that's an indicative.
Because Cole's got an afro now.
Yeah, he's got an indicative symptom of just not finishing, but they finished this week, and they did make mistakes. I think that's part of the reason why Seattle jumped out to the early lead that they had, but they ended up coming away with it at the end, 35-29, Maddie. And the hashtag find semi comes back. The trend comes back. We're putting him back on the milk cartons. Don't know where he is, but either way,
I don't know what name he's going to go by either.
Thoughts, Maddie?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Seattle to me dominated majority of that game. But LA was just every mistake that Seattle made, LA decided that they're going to pounce on it. And you would make a mistake and you'd give them an inch and they'd take a mile. It happened so many times in that game. And Seattle was prone to making a lot of handling errors, a lot of issues on offense. I'm still not sold on this offense, their team offense. They have, again, similar to Old Glory DC, they have these flashes of brilliance. And then you kind of see them make these sloppy mistakes. And then you watch them inside the 22 and they just I think Seattle should have won this if they just converted inside the 22. And I know that seems like a really simple thing to say, but once you get inside that 22, your conversion rate needs to be higher. Your conversion rate needs to, or else you're just not going to put yourself in a good position to win, no matter how much you dominate territory, especially against an explosive team like LA, who can really pop off at any moment. And we saw that multiple times in this game.
Once they get it going, LA looks electric. That's what I expected.
But
of them.
It's like a different way. You watch LA, it's a different way from Chicago. You see Chicago, they will just build phases and they will grind you down. And they will grind you down and they will beat you physically. But LA is they will just out of nowhere.
They'll pop off for a 40-meter run. Exactly.
And then they just build off that. Their momentum just continues to build and build and build off that. And they got the perfect players to kind of do that.
Yeah. No doubt about that. I will say, just from a last thing on the match totality, this was a must win for RFC LA. A must win. Hadn't won a match on the season. You can use it as an excuse. You obviously probably had the hardest start to the schedule like out of all the teams, you face New England first, coming off of the championship season. You then face San Diego, and who am I including there? You also face Utah, correct? Was it Utah? No, Chicago.
Yeah.
Chicago?
I don't know.
One of them. But anyway, you face the top 3 teams, and then you take on Seattle, who did seem like going into this one aren't the same Seattle, kind of similar to the New England Free Jacks. So RFCLA, regardless of how they did that, they came away with the win, and I do think that it was a must-win to get them back on track. So we'll see how they can kind of build off of this and continue to use that momentum there. One team of the week player from this one, from LA, Jason Dom, electric, and it looks like
this guy's gonna be top 2
second row players,
top 2, not 1 second row player this year.
Yeah, I mean, my skepticism heading into this season was whether or not he was going to play as second row, and it appears to be that way. So we'll see. But he is our second row player of the week. Whenever a second row player can sniff anywhere close to double digits, you're quite happy with that. But we did actually have a lot of fantasy points in this one. Andrew Coe, great to see him, friend of the show, 23.2 fantasy
something
points
in his afro.
157 meters gain in this one with the try. Probably could have had another one, honestly, towards more towards the being four score that one. Devon Rousseau looked good on the Seattle side of things.
Cole looks like he could break out in the Party Rock Anthem song.
It is true. He's got to get those neon leggings under, get that going.
He needs a headband.
Anthem. He does need a sweatband.
Yeah.
Sweatband. Do some aerobics, some cardio. Get the boombox going. All right. Andrew Coe, 23.2, like I mentioned. Ben Houston, and we'll get into him more in a little bit. 17.4 for him with the absence.
Man, what a tough one. What a tough. Yeah, we'll talk about more in waiver, but Ben Houston, what an interesting decision fantasy-wise that you'd have to make with that.
Yeah.
I'll just say from this game-wise, he's a guy, and we've seen this across every game, he's a guy that benefits so much from that. I mean, if you know, like the 1-3-3-1 structure, which is basically like 2 pods of 3 within the 15s pretty much. And then there's always like a loose forward that sits in the 15 channel.
Yeah.
Just look at his meters gain this game, like 54 meters gain. And the number of times that he got the ball in that 15 meter channel and had a chance to go with it, or was the next guy there.
Yeah. I mean,
it was just silly. And you think about it like, man, I wish that was semi.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, it was like you take one, I'll take one. I mean, he assists Coe's try and then Coe assists his try.
Like every time the ball that they made a big break, the ball was in his channel and the ball was on that side of the field. It's crazy.
Rory Van Voot, 12.7 for him. We mentioned Jason Dom. From the Seattle side of things, we did mention Devon Rousseau, 20.2, 101 meters gain. I mean, you say it like, yeah, but he's had a great season too so far, like kind of low key. Like, I mean, outside of the one match in round 3 where he scored 4.4, like double digits every week. Obviously, this is his highest at 20.2. We'll see what happens of Dan Creel when he kind of gets back into the groove of things and how that affects it. But I mean, Devon Rousseau is just a good rugby player. Whether he's at the center position or the back 3 position, he's going to get you fantasy points. So very confident Devon going forward. Duncan Matthews.
Vintage.
Yeah, this was vintage Duncan Matthews, where meters gained 66, scored a try, 8 tackles, solid for him. And then lastly for Seattle, Malachi Esdale with the he could have had 2 tries. He tried to reach. You're told not to do that. I know it's hard when you're that close, and that cost Seattle. But 51 meters gained, a try scored as well for 12 and a half.
He had a really good game. I really liked the way that he played. Especially with that Inafuti injury, a guy to definitely watch out for. Yeah,
and outside of Zion goingness, Gonzalo Bertrand, who's going to finish off as the number 1 scrum half this year.
Also, how did he ended up in like the 15 channels so many times with the ball in hand? Just crazy.
12.3 fantasy points for him. Pretty good stuff.
Crazy, man. Crazy.
All right. 4 matches this week. Again, with the 3 teams on bye, another bye Mageddon. This week, not going to have to worry about that, but after some of the breakout performances, there are some guys that you will want to have a look to see if they're available on your waiver wire. And we're going to break that down right here in our waiver wire breakdown.
Waiver wire breakdown.
All right, and let's talk about some of these guys that might be available on your waiver wire to scoop up here as we enter round 6. Again, we leave a bye Mageddon. We put one behind us. Only one team on bye in week 6. So the need for stream. Do you like that? the need for stream
It was something, Ryan. It was something.
is not as needed here this week. But there are still guys though that you want to keep an eye on to see if you need to make some adjustments on your roster. The big question for me though, Maddie, in this waiver wire segment is the question of those streaming guys versus marquee guys. And I'm going to ask you some of these questions because I think there are going to be some of these guys that come up. Most notably, a Houston SaberCats team that looks pretty good that is coming off bye is taking on the Anthem Rugby Carolina squads. There might be some streaming options there, which means I'm going to ask you, are you starting the streamer or the marquee guy? But we'll start off here with the front row position. Maddie, you talked about this guy in the NOLA goal game as one of the better NOLA players, took advantage and was a symptom of that set piece doing well. Who are you picking up here as you eye the stream of the week or some that you keep held long-term here on NOLA?
To me, Joe Taufetti is like a long-term hold. Because I think I don't know what it was. Maybe he was coming back from injury, but like it seems like he should be the guy moving forward. And you also look like NOLA Gold. I don't know what it is, but sneakily the past couple weeks, their set piece has turned it on, even though the team has sucked. So yeah, I mean, I like Joe Taufetti. The only other person who I don't think you should pick up this week for waivers, just because of who they're going up against. But this guy's also a long-term hold if you're willing to kind of boot this week, is Connor Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to continue to have good weeks with the Anthem set piece looking better and better every week.
Yeah, Anthem has improved there more. But yeah, Joe Taufetti, 14% owned, 8.4 fantasy points on the season. Again, a large part of that, he hasn't been appearing, but you'd imagine that they brought him in for a reason, and he does look like the better of the hookers in that front row room. So wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing a little bit more of him, and now is definitely the time to hop on that. For me, Maddie, Karan Van Vuren, 43% owned. He's a guy that I think has established himself as the guy in Seattle. Seattle set piece has looked pretty decent at times. And Van Vuren has looked solid in a large portion of those games as well. Again, kind of a lackluster week here this week at 4.9, but he's playing the 70 minutes. And when you get that for front row, the opportunity will always be there. 2 out of 3 games he's had double-digit tackles. So for me, Karan Van Vuren, 43% owned, is a guy that I would be happy to pick up off the waiver wire, that or Joe Taufetti for sure.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, let's move on to the second row position here. And I think you and I had both similar thoughts when it comes to this. It's really, at this point, pick your poison. I'll go first here, Maddie. I'm going to say you got to go pick up Nathan Denhout, 29% owned. This is probably more of a streaming option and then seeing what it comes of it, because Nathan Denhout has not been great for you, right? At the second row position where there has been a lot of lackluster point performances, he scores 9.6 before the bye. He was only on for 60 minutes, but 31 meters gained and a try. See what he can do against the Anthem. There's always an opportunity for one of these guys to pop in for a score, and especially when it's against the Anthem. So Nathan Denhout would be my bet here this week, coming off of the bye. Maddie, you got the other number.
You pick the streamer. I picked the long-term option in Johan Momsen. 29% owned. He has got 18.9 fantasy points on the season. Yes, you can look at the first 2 weeks and be concerned, but for me, it's the last 2 weeks that has really, really kind of showed it for me. Actually, I'll say the last 3 weeks, round 2, 3, and 4, without the yellow card in round 2, I think he has a decent week. He gets 7.9 points in round 4 or round 3, 7.1 points in round 4. All that without even needing to score a try. To me, that's exactly what you kind of want to look for in a second rower to pick up, and a guy who could potentially be your fill-in, especially with a lot of these second rowers potentially moving to back row eligibility.
Deep option if you have maybe one of the Chicago second row players and you're like scrambling to find one. Matt Jensen of Utah. He might be
Rob
a pickup
Harley
here.
Well.
See if they're available. Matt Jensen, 0% owned. So he'll be there for you if you just need to throw someone guy in that second row spot. All right, moving on into the back row position. For me, Maddie, well, let's start the conversation right there. Let's start the Ben Houston conversation, because Semi's not in the lineup again. At this point, I don't know what you can be thinking. Again, is it a risky play? 100%, because Semi can pop in that lineup anytime. Right before we saw him coming off the bench 2 weeks ago, it was the visa issue, right? This week, we have no idea. Is it a lingering injury? Maybe. But in the meantime,
I think the visa only said he was allowed to play 40 minutes.
is that so? Yeah, when they stamp the passport, right? It's like 40 minute 40 minute play time.
That's why you got the yellow card in the last game too.
Exactly. Right. You got to minimize it. They told the ref.
Yeah.
TMON coming in. But you can't you can't neglect the fact that Ben Houston is having a good season here.
Yeah.
With Semi Kunatani out.
Yeah. And he finds himself in really good positions to be effective fantasy wise. That's what I love so much about him. I think if I was a Semi Kunatani fan, I'm putting money down to get Ben Houston if somebody doesn't have him already, because I want that assurance of whenever Semi's not starting, I know that I have Ben Houston to play as well. And when Semi's starting, I don't have to start Benny, or I can have both. Like, we don't know what that looks like either.
And it's an interesting predicament to be in, because I feel like there's a lot of things that go into this. Like Semi Kunatani, let's not forget, when LA announced that he was coming, they announced him as a lock, right? Not that that means anything, but like they announced him as a lock. When he made the appearance last week, I get it that Tim Anstey was the one who got the yellow card, but it wasn't Ben Houston that was replaced, right? Ben Houston played the full 80 with Semi on the field. And with Semi on the field, still ends up scoring 14.5 fantasy points, right? So like there is a world where Semi comes back to the lineup and Ben Houston is still fantasy productive for you. So it's not completely 100% risk. I think there is value to maybe see what he does, even if you're not the Semi Kunatani owner. But yeah, to your point, Maddie, especially if you're the Semi Kunatani owner, I think hopping on Ben Houston is great. Only 43% owned. I think by the end of this week, he's going to be owned by quite a bit more than that. Maddie, you have a guy we talked about earlier who has been an MLR tackle machine.
Yeah, I got Corey Daniel here. And to me, I mean, surprisingly, this to me is actually a streamer position. 43% owned, 42.2 fantasy points on the year. Really not doing a lot in the first kind of, I guess, round 1, 3, and 4, being under 10 points. But then he explodes in that most recent round of 20.9 fantasy points, a try assist. And the one that I really care about is the 27 tackles here. That is what you pick him up for. That's why you have him on your team. To me, with the streamer of him coming up against New England Free Jacks, and then playing RFCLA, I just think that he's going to be asked to potentially be in a role to make a lot of tackles again. And I think he'll be a good streamer option to have.
Last guy I'll just throw out there as a deep streamer, if those guys are taken, Emmanuel Albert, 0% owned. So I know those of you listening, you can go pick this guy up. He's taking on Anthem. He's coming off a 16.5 point week where he played the full 80 minutes played. You can count that he might be able to do that again on the against the Anthem here coming up this week. So if you have a Lucas Rumble, if you have a Mason Flesh, Emmanuel Albert may be your guy that you can slot in the weak spot start for him and see what he does. All right, let's move on to the scrum half position. I'll go first here, Maddie. Not going to take long. 0% owned. This is based off of no factual analysis whatsoever, but knowing the pattern of the Utah Warriors and knowing that Zion going went off and knowing that they like to play shenanigans at the scrum half position, you can count on Logan Crowley probably starting this upcoming week against the Seattle Seawolves, just because they like to do that. Logan Crowley, whoever's starting at that Utah 9 position, always has a chance to get points the way that back line plays. So if Crowley's starting, go pick him up.
Yeah, I'm staying the heck away from that Utah scrum half room. I just
like
can't
if you have missed short.
There's no rhyme or reason to the decisions they make. It doesn't make sense. I have no clue. They split 60-40 every time. There's no point. There's no point in even trying.
Logan Crowley's going to go off for 2 tries.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. For me, the one that I'm looking at, and there's not much to look at, but for me, the one that I'm looking at is kind of making a guess, an educated guess on who's going to start for Houston. Yes, Houston's coming off bye. Yes, Andre Warner also didn't play in the game before the bye, I believe. But, I think against Anthem, I think this is a really great spot for Juan D. Oliver. Yeah, I got the R's and the Juan and the Guate
Yeah, that's
all
good.
mixed up. But yeah, it's a great spot for Juan D. Oliver to kind of have a chance to play in that starting role. We know that he can do it in this league. And I think this is kind of the week for him to do it. I wouldn't put any money down. This is a streamer here, and you're just kind of guessing.
I mean, how much is it a reflection of the state of the scrum half position and how shallow it is?
Well,
when
I'm not touching Utah. I'm not touching
what
NOLA.
what I'm
So
saying.
I know, but we have 9 teams to choose from, Ryan.
That's true.
Basically, because I'm not touching Utah. I'm not touching NOLA. I don't know if I'm really touching Anthem, but I mean, Carlo Denician might be already picked up. But like, we have 9 teams to choose from, and we're stuck with guessing who's going to be starting for Houston against Anthem.
I will say Andre Warner is only 57% owned, so
That's dumb. I don't understand how that makes sense. Everybody figure it out.
Pick up Andre Warner if that's the case, because he will be a long-term play if that's the case. All right, let's go.
I would boot my 9 position for this week if that means having Andre Warner for the rest of the season.
All right, you heard it here first. Anyone so far that you'd put money on at all?
I think Mumson's a guy that I would personally like, very low value though. And I think people are going to put money down on Big Joe.
Okay. I think people will put money down on Houston as well. I think it won't be high because of the scariness
yes,
of hashtag find semi, but I agree with that. All right, fly half position. For me, Eddie Fouché, 43% own. Again, I kind of one of those
Played
situations.
57 minutes. Can't do it.
I know.
Can't do it. He's so average.
If you're need,
he's not average player, but he's playing incredibly average.
If you're in need of a fly half, right? Let's say you had a Videla, right, and you thought he was going to be your fly half starter, or you had a Tim Sweel. Would you rather want, and this guy's another waiver wire option that I have on my list, Lucardi, who's also 43% owned, who us actually, it came clutch, Maddie, for our league, because we had Lincoln McClutchy, who's on bye, and we just said, hey, we'll try to throw out Lucardi. Maybe he'll start, and he ended up starting. So he actually did well for us. Who are you rather starting? You have a Tim Sweel, which obviously you're for sure not going to get this week because of or a Christopher Hilsenbeck. Do you want Fouché or do you want Cardi?
Fouché.
Okay.
Now I'm going to go another route, and I'm going to say go for AJ Alatimu. Because AJ Alatimu is like you think about the Houston backline, all the combinations that we see, it's probably going to be Alatimu starting at 10. It's going to be Drew Wild at 15. Davey Kutzer is going to get a break.
I think this is the dangerous game when we start playing who they will and will not start, because we know how MLR is always done off. Okay, I guess we'll see when those lineups come out. Which I will say they have been a lot better this year in terms of when
they've been crushing it. Good for them.
It's been good. I will mention also throughout there Harrison Boyle. I know he allowed that.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say Potros did get hurt.
Potros hamstring injury towards the tail end. If you are the Potros owner, I would go pick up Harrison Boyle as an insurance option. Even if you're not, could be a spot start again. If you're a Tim Sweel owner, you're a Christopher Hilsenbeck owner, Harrison Boyle might be a saving grace for you this upcoming week against Old Glory DC for New England. All right, let's go into the center position, Maddie. We're both on the same page with this. We loved what we saw. Yeah, apparently. Why don't you do the honors here and say the name?
Yeah, we got it. Everybody's got to pick up Leroux Milan. He looked back. I mean, yes, NOLA literally couldn't tackle anything. But the way, like, those are the types of games that build confidence in a player that kind of makes them start going on a roll. And a guy with as much talent as him coming back from injury, I think this is kind of the catalyst that's going to start for a really great rest of the year. I would put money on Leroux Milan. I would genuinely put money on him.
I think 15%.
Yeah, from 0 to Joe Mano, I would put 15. Yeah.
That joke being that Matty dropped $45 on Joe Mano or whatever it was to go pick him up, and it gives him a whopping 6 fantasy points this past week. Still got the dub though. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I would put 15 to 20% on Leroux Milan. Ben Lesage is also injured right now. I don't know what his status will be for this upcoming week, but it does appear to be the Leroux Milan show moving forward here for the foreseeable future. Other options, the Houston center room, you can try to guess on who's going to go in there. All of them are pretty.
That's the hardest one. You can guess scrum half. You can guess fly half. You can guess fullback. The center room is, you don't know.
Okay,
Is it
so
going to
we
be Sam
got
Hill? Is it going to be Dom McKenna? Is it going to be Lawrence? Actually, well, Tuala Tassi's injured. I'm pretty sure. So
let's leave Dom McKenna out because he's owned in most leagues. So
yes, so Sam Hill or Lawrence Vanderskiff. Frankly, I want none of them.
Insider knowledge, I did hear that Lawrence Vanderskiff is not necessarily, I don't know how reliable this is, but like he's like around the team, but he's not like he's gonna get called upon when needed. So whether that means anything, I guess he was called upon a couple weeks ago and he ended up getting minus 4.2 fantasy points. But either way, 0% owned. So do with what you will with that. The three options there is Tassi if he's not injured, Vanderskiff, and Sam Hill. Do I say it, Matt? I said it the week before, but he's doing okay. And if you have any of the Chicago centers, like if you have an Ollie Devoto, like do you go pick up Isaac to Tamaki?
Nope.
Okay.
He looked better.
He looked better
last week.
He looked better.
No, do not pick him up.
All right. Sam Hill or Isaac to Tamaki?
Literally anybody else.
All right. All right. I love the good advice we're giving on this show. All right.
Not in waivers. Those are guys that you pick up when you find the starting lineup and you act very quickly.
But if you can't, $0 bid. Who are you taking?
Okay. I'll go to Tamaki just because I know he's going to be at least in the lineup.
Okay. All right. Good to know. All right. Back three players now.
Stop giving me dumb decisions to make.
No, these are decisions that the people are faced with.
Yeah. You think they're faced with that? Do you think they're faced with Tamaki versus Sam Hill in our 8 people leagues?
Could be.
All right.
All right. Back three position here. Again, we've kind of gone the same route on this. Houston is taking on Anthem Rugby Carolina.
Wrong. Different piles, Ryan. You say yours first, but mine's different.
I think ours is the same.
Yours is a streamer.
I think Drew Wild. I mean, if he was not picked up, the 29% owned, had the electric game before the bye. 28.9 fantasy points.
Tell me when he's going to start next.
It is true, but he looks good when he's on the field. And according to Matthew, based on his logic, he should be playing this week. He should be playing this week. So
he will, yes.
Drew Wild. What is your thought, Matty?
Actually, no, it's crazy. I bet you Mick Schumacher is going to start, and that'd be nuts. Anyways, my pickup, Rufus McLean. I think for like right now, like this for me is not because of Anthem. The Anthem's a nice perk. I think you could benefit from it. But you look at the past 2 weeks, round 3 and 4, 13.2 fantasy points, 11.3 fantasy points. That's just solid production from a back three. And probably the best that you can get on a waiver wire. He is at the moment 14% owned. And yeah, that's you'll be available in most leagues for sure. And I think he's a nice little pickup to have.
My other just note was there Max Schumacher. You mentioned him at 43% owned. Again, I don't think you can have enough assets going up against this Anthem team if you do need a spot start.
He's definitely in the lineup. 100% he will be in the lineup either on the wing or at fullback.
All right. Let's play now this is where the fun game comes. I know you said he's not a streamer, but I guess let's say these back three guys are like you said, Drew Wild, Rufus McLean or Axel Muller.
Axel Muller.
Rufus McLean or Ed Fido.
Ed Fido.
Rufus McLean or Xavier Mignot.
Xavier Mignot.
Really? Okay. So you're more on the marquee name guy.
Well, like I'm getting Rufus McLean for like 10 points a week, but I'm getting Fido and Xavier Mignot for the 15 points that they could get me. Yes, they're going to give you going to give you some duds, but like I have a much better history of seeing Xavier Mignot and Ed Fido score tries than I have with Rufus McLean.
Even this week against Anthem.
Yeah, I mean,
I think I'm starting Rufus McLean over all those guys this week.
Yeah, but like I'm trying to think back to the games against Anthem. Like I don't remember the back three necessarily going crazy against them. I'm trying to think. I guess Xavier Mignot did go nuts in the first game, but they've improved a lot. But I genuinely don't think that it's going to be a blowout.
Okay. All right, which will be a good little teaser to our betting segment coming up. All right, lastly here, defensive set piece. If you have Chicago, Why Anthem? I saw this. You sent this to me. You literally said, I don't want him this week when you said don't put Connor Robinson. Why are you putting Anthem there?
I know it's contradicting, but I have this feeling. I'm going to start Connor Robinson this week, okay? On my listener league team.
All right.
I just have this feeling that they're going to be okay.
All right. That is 0% owned Anthem Rugby Carolina, by the way. 7 points on the fantasy season. Names to look out for.
But Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan, last 2 weeks. Okay?
Yeah.
And I know we never talk about this much about our defense. But last 2 weeks, they've scored all of their fantasy points. 4 points, 3 points, and they've gotten a try assist in both of them.
Okay.
And that's the games where we're thinking, hey, they're going to get blown out. But no, hey, they put up some points and they get defensive bonus points in both of those games.
All right, we'll see if they can do that against Houston. Speaking of Houston, I have them as a streamer, 57% owned. Pick up Houston.
Yeah, it's a cop out. They're over 50%. Doesn't even count.
San Diego Legion, 57% owned.
Doesn't count. You have to say NOLA Gold or
my other one is RFC Los
Miami
Angeles. Mine's RFC LA, 29% owned. They go up against
just say all of them with lower than 50%.
No, because I'm not starting Old Glory DC.
I'd actually go NOLA Gold versus Los Angeles.
I don't. Okay, pick them up. Throw a dart at a dartboard and see what defensive set piece.
Who cares about set piece? I didn't even start a set piece in my lineup this week.
Fair enough. It's becoming a strategy. All right. Well, speaking of these head-to-head matchups, let's break them down. Let's give our predictions here for the upcoming week 6.
Rucking Rundown.
All right, this is the week 6 edition of the Rucking Rundown. And like we said, one team on bye, Chicago. Can I take this moment to give myself some flowers and say that I was a perfect 4 for 4 last week?
Yeah, but you do it the boring way by playing it safe all the time.
No, I make the picks that I think
Anthem's not there, then you just play it safe with all the other ones.
We will see. All right. So I am 13-10 on the season. Maddie is in last place. I had to mention 10-13. Vandy still killing it, 15-8. Almost had that Seattle pick, which would have turned the tables, but either way, he did go NOLA against New England, which was it ended up being quite close. Either way. So let's see what we can do this week. We start off the week at 5 p.m. A later start on Saturday. Old Glory DC taking on the New England Free Jacks. This one's an interesting one. I always find that this match,
a banger.
DC versus New England, is always a close one. It's hosted in DC. Should be interesting. Old Glory coming off of that loss to Chicago. New England hasn't looked necessarily that great, and is looking to continue their ways after a tight win against NOLA. Maddie?
Yeah, we're going Old Glory DC. They're gonna do it. This is a routine. Old Glory DC is gonna do it. Watch out for a huge week from Jason Robertson off the tee. This is like an international test for them.
All right, I am going New England in this one.
That's what we did last year, and then they lost in the last minute.
It is true. It is true. I do think
every year it's a routine. They have to lose once every year to Old Glory DC.
I do think LaRue Milan is going to go off for a one in this one. Jed Melville.
Yeah, okay, tell him to try to do the same running lines through Nick Grigg.
That's true.
All right, Nick Grigg's an absolute refrigerator.
That is true. You have said that before. All right. Moving on to the second matchup on Saturday. Anthem Rugby Carolina taking on the Houston SaberCats at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I mean, I don't think we really need we've touched on all these assets. I'm going Houston.
Yeah, I'll also go Houston, but I think it's going to be close. I do think it's going to be close.
All right.
I don't think it's going to be a blowout.
We'll get into that line in just a bit here. But we're on the same page, though. We do think Houston's coming away with it. By how bad, we might be differing on that. Play all your Houston players. So who are you playing on Anthem? I guess that is the bigger question that people want to know. Like, you're playing Line Latu.
Oh, well, I don't know about that.
You don't think you're playing at the fullback position?
I mean, yeah, maybe. I guess I will see. I'm playing Gaffa. Not making that mistake again. Storty, if
Latu
he's in.
or Van Voot?
Oh, Van Voot, 100%.
Latu or Fido?
Ooh. Latu.
Okay. All right. Just trying to find a line.
But yeah,
Cliven.
Latu.
Cliven if he starts.
Cliven definitely start for sure. McKean,
I mean, we have got. Wait, what did you say about Goffa?
I'm going to start Connor Robinson.
Are we going to play Goffa? We have him in our TFR.
Yeah, we got to play Goffa. We can't leave him out anymore with what he did to us on our bench.
He did burn us. All right. Third matchup on Saturday, also at 7:00 Eastern time. This is the worst ones. When they're at the exact same time, you can't throw them on it. I only have one ESPN Plus account. I don't have as many screens that I need.
I think you can do a multi-viewer.
I haven't found that.
But I'd much rather just watch it one game at a time.
I agree. NOLA Gold taking on RFC Los Angeles. I'm going LA on this one. I think they're starting to find the pieces. I don't think it'll be pretty. I still don't think it'll be pretty. But against NOLA, this is the perfect time for a team like NOLA to come up with it. I think they are the kryptonite. They have a backline that can chew up that defense. They're going to blow off for a couple of big-time plays and come away with a win.
Yeah, I agree. LA, I think, is going to get the win here. Watch out for big game from Billy Meeks and Rory Van Voot.
We'll see. Maybe Reese McDonald's back this week. That'd be crazy.
No, that would be crazy, but I don't think so.
All right. Anyone that you're confident on the NOLA side? Joe Tofete, I guess. Jonah Moe.
I feel like you got to go Xavier Mignot. I mean, you look at what Malachi Exdale did to that LA team. You got to look at one of those wingers and feel like you got some pretty good, feeling pretty good about that.
Who's your favorite out of the three? Cooper Coates, Ed Fido, Xavier McNeil.
It's Xavier Mignot.
Okay. Over Ed Fido.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Long-term question then. Who do you think is going to have a better year, Fido or McNeil?
Mignot.
Wow. All right. Let's go on to the second last matchup, 10 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. The Seattle Seawolves taking on the Utah Warriors. This one should be interesting. I think this one will be very interesting. At home in Seattle, we know what that place can be like. Utah looks good. Sometimes they shoot themselves in the foot. Seattle didn't necessarily capitalize on mistakes last week, but they definitely made mistakes. Can Utah capitalize on those? Thoughts here?
Yeah, we're going Utah here. Okay. I just think Utah's looks a lot cleaner. I think they got a lot more together. And I think they'll do well.
Every one of those players in that Utah backline is an auto start at this point.
Yes.
Joel Hodgson, Leo Ela, Spencer Jones.
Leo Ela's, you're not starting him at the 10 position if he's not kicking.
Oh, well, that's true.
Well, like he was kicking for goal though. He was kicking for goal. So yeah, I mean I did have him my start of the week. So yeah, you would start him if he's at 12 for sure.
Then confidence with Joel Hodgson. We actually didn't even really touch on that. Is that a concern for you that Leo Ela is taking the kicks?
I mean, Joel Hodgson's not going to score as much, but you got to start him.
Yeah. Interesting. You're starting Nick Ben.
Nick Ben's going to score another try.
Yeah. All right. Seattle side. Are you done of this Rickard Hatting game?
Yeah. I mean, I've dropped him for a long time now, so yeah, I'm out of it. He did score a try, but it was kind of a gimme.
Rickard Hatting or Devin Short?
Devin Short did undo the cornrows, so Devin Short.
There you go. All right. We're both going Utah in this one. All right. Last game.
Yeah. Oh, also 13 channel. Not going to be as easy. Spencer Jones, not going to have a free ride. Like Devon Rousseau is a stout defender.
Who would you rather start, Devon or Spencer?
Devon Rousseau.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. just
that's a dumb question. On to the next.
All right. Last matchup, San Diego taking on the Miami Sharks. This is, I think, going to be the most lopsided game of the weekend, in my opinion.
That says something the way you're talking about this Houston Anthem game.
Well, or it just means, I mean, I'm speaking for you too. I get the way you talked about it. You think that this one would also be the biggest lopsided one.
I agree.
Okay. Well, I think they're both going to be big. Let's say that. San Diego at home against Miami. I mean, start your San Diego's. San Diego's winning this one.
Yeah, San Diego. And I feel like you got to look at who's I feel like now we got to look at that 13 channel. Yeah, I feel like that back.
Like Tian Lutz is probably a pretty good start this week.
Yeah, Tian Lutz might be a pretty good start. I think
Tian Lutz or Junior Gaffa.
Junior Gaffa. But I think, I mean, obviously we're going to be looking at Poitevin and Wilkin to do some big things here. Yeah, what a duo.
I think the only auto start for me on Miami is probably Ardeo,
Videla.
Videla, and then Martin Elias if he's kicking. Like if he's starting the fly half, I
Yeah, Kubisha is
guess.
always a
He's
good
got a
start.
Kubisha got a red card.
So he might get ejected.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
All right, who are you going here?
I'm going San Diego, obviously.
Yeah, San Diego for me.
I thought it was pretty clear.
All right, let's wrap up the show here with our last segment of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
TFR Betting
I think
Challenge.
I crushed some of those Super Rugby bets.
Ryan is heating up.
You guys don't even listen to my Super Rugby. I don't even listen to my Super Rugby bets, but I keep crushing them every week.
You do, and we'll get into those. But Ryan's heating up. Back-to-back weeks of making a little bit of money, and it feels good. Is this how it feels? Is this how it feels to?
I guess so, but it doesn't mean much when you're down like by $50 still.
It is true. I am down by quite a bit. I'm not down by $50. Down by less than 20. And I'm in the positives now. So this is a good thing. I made almost $10 on the season. Made some good picks this past week. The viewers,
that's my lemonade stand.
The viewers and listeners were harping on Vandy about, do you like pain? Do you like pain when you're picking 4-leg parlays? And Vandy almost had it, but Seattle just couldn't come through for him, and it was tough.
How you do it?
It was tough, but I mean,
do the parlays.
That Utah line was too spicy for me to not go all in on that, which was a good one. This one's gonna be a tougher week, I think. We'll see what it is, but Vandy is still winning. He's made almost $30 on the season. I'm at almost 10. Before we get into the Super Rugby lines, because as you know, the Major League Rugby lines don't get released until later in the week, typically around Thursday or Friday.
That's the Vegas lines. Here we got the Matt E lines. Let's go through them. Free Jacks versus Old Glory. Free Jacks favored by 2.5. And I'm taking
I would take that.
Old Glory on that.
What?
Okay. Yeah, I'm picking Old Glory. Yeah, I'm taking Old Glory. I would take Old Glory on that. I would actually kind of stay away from that game just because, Houston versus Anthem. I bet you the line's going to be like 23 and a half. It's got to be at least.
So, okay, let me put that. The highest on the season so far has been 17 and a half.
Okay,
and that was
so
against San Diego.
Okay, so it's going to be similar. So, let's say 16 and a half. All right. And I think Anthem covers.
Okay, I actually completely lied to you there. It was 20 and a half against San Diego.
So then it's 19 and a half.
Okay.
And I still think Anthem covers. That's even better. RFCLA versus NOLA. I think NOLA goes in. Nope. I think RFCLA goes in as favorites. Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know who's going to be favorites. They both kind of been. I think RFCLA goes in as favorites.
I would agree.
1.5 points though.
Yes.
And I would take that.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
I would take that for sure. Utah versus Seattle. Utah goes in as favorites. I think they'll be favored by 5.5. And I honestly think that Seattle would cover that if the line is similar to that. Anything over 5, I would say that Seattle should cover. And then San Diego, Miami, I think the line's going to be probably around 12.5 points. And I think San Diego takes that one. But the ones that I would hit are probably Anthem covering and RFCLA winning.
I'm not touching Anthem covering. I ain't touching that. I ain't getting burned by that. I think my most interesting one is going to be the NOLA Gold RFC Los Angeles one.
That is the best one, I think. I think that one's is where you're going to get the most advantageous odds.
Yeah, probably the most value in there. All right, let's quickly run through it here, Maddie. Six Nations is done. Congratulations to France for winning that.
Yep.
Let's quickly, for the ones out there that still like to bet a little bit on other rugby outside of MLR, I forgot to mention, this is the TFR Betting Challenge presented by Betstamp. Betstamp, betting is easy. You can go check the link down below. How many times have we been doing this? We've been doing this way too many times. And you can get new user deals in sports books available in your area. A pretty useful tool. And you can kind of hop on a lot of line shopping when it comes to MLR that you can get. I've been using Fanatics, and it's been giving me some pretty good odds. You can find all those books that are available there using that link down below. Helps you out, helps support the show as well. But let's get into it, Maddie. Super Rugby starts on Friday, 2 a.m. Chiefs at Moana Pacifica line.
Oh, it's got to be like 20 something. No?
14.5.
Yeah,
Chiefs
that makes
favored.
sense. Moana's been keeping everything close. Gosh, I love to take the Moana underdog picks because they find a way to keep every game close. Yeah, I like the like even against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs have been rolling. Moana, like, yeah, I'd take them covering.
All right. Reds at Highlanders, Friday at 11 o'clock.
Reds favored.
No.
What?
Highlanders
That's
favored
crazy.
by
Yeah, I've
three
been
and a
kind of
half.
lacking. I've been kind of lacking with my Super Rugby, to be honest. Reds favored or Highlanders favored?
Highlanders favored by 3.5.
Ooh,
Yep.
I would take the Reds.
Okay. Crusaders at Blues.
Blues got to be favored.
It's basically a pick 'em, but Blues are
Yeah.
underdogs
Blues are underdogs?
at half a point.
Yeah, okay, stay away from that one. Stay the heck away from that one.
They
That
know
ain't it.
Vegas Vegas knows something.
Stay away from that one.
All right. Brumbies at Waratahs.
Waratahs favored. What, by 6.5?
You're doing terrible. Waratahs are underdogs by 4.5.
See, pretty bad. Yeah, yeah. I thought Waratahs have been doing really well this year. Yeah, okay. We might as well just don't even take my advice on this one, other than the Moana Pacifica one. But Drew is our favorite, right?
Drew is underdogs, 3.5.
God, I would love for them to be fair. I felt like if this was a game to be them for them to be fair, I know they're second last, but if there was a game for them to be favored, this would be it.
Then you're saying there's a lot of value there. Then you would take
There's
the
a lot of
3.5.
value. I would take Drew. I love Drua and Moana
I
Pacifica.
mean, in all of your
not as much as the Canes,
in
but
all
they're
of-
not playing this week.
in all of your thinking, the fact that you picked everyone who were not underdogs as underdogs, you
Shows
should
how
pick that
much
spread.
I've been away from Super Rugby.
Okay,
That's how dedicated I am to MLR this year.
that is. It's
I've
true.
given up Super Rugby
It's true, which is a big deal.
completely.
As you wear a Hurricanes jersey, is that also correlated with the fact that the Hurricanes are not doing as well? I don't know, but
Yeah, but the players have been sick and they just beat the Highlanders. So,
All right. Well, hey, lines for MLR will come out later this week. Keep an eye out for that. We do release our official picks on Fridays. That is the TFR Betting Challenge presented by Betstamp. Betstamp Betting made easy. Again, use that link down below to find new user deals at sportsbooks available in your area. Help support or help give you some free money, some free bets, and help support the show while you're doing at it too. People have been signing up. It's been very nice. Been very nice.
like
Maybe you
it.
can get us some new sounds, some new drops.
I can give you a new drop.
All right. You want to close out the show with the new drop?
Da-da-da.
There you go. Hey, for Matt Yee, for Devin Vandy Vanderpool, I am Ryan Yee. We'll see you next week. Another episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
That's all, folks.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.